Hello and welcome to part 2 of the training. Because a good start is the halfway to success, proper project initiation documentation are critical to success of any project. By the end of this presentation, you should understand three things: why project initiation matters, what needs to be done, and how to do it properly. And the good news is that project initiation doesn't need to be complicated. The same basic principles apply to most projects. And with the right templates, proper project initiation can be simple and easy to do. In this presentation, you will learn about four things: project lifecycle stages, project organization and roles, purpose of project documentation, as well as documentation created during project initiation stage, which include project charter, stakeholder register, and right register. And finally, we will look at a practical checklist that helps confirm whether the initial stage of a project has been properly completed. All projects are unique, time-bound endeavors and have similar life cycle stages. For simple projects, the life cycle may be straightforward and contain just four stages: initiate, plan, execute, and close. However, when project is complicated or uncertain, it becomes impossible to create an effective project plan for the whole duration of the project based on information available at the start of the project. For such projects, rolling wave planning and execution approach are used. In this approach, the project execution stage is divided into a sequence of phases, as they named in waterfall methods, or sprints, as named in agile methods. And detailed planning for each phase or sprint is performed just before the start of that phase, using latest available information and stakeholder feedback. But regardless of project duration, uncertainty, or selected delivery approach, all projects need to be properly initiated. The project initiation stage creates the foundation for a successful project, but unfortunately, it is often rushed. Project initiation should achieve three main outcomes. First, projects should be defined, agreed, and formally established. Next, project organization should be agreed. And finally, project manager should be assigned and authorized to manage the project. Project initiation lays the foundation for project success. When this foundation is weak, problems that surface later are often difficult, time-consuming, and expensive to correct. By being temporary human endeavors, projects require a dedicated temporary organization that exists for the duration of the project. This project organization must fulfill three key functions: provide direction and control, manage project activities and resources, and deliver the project intended outcomes. The project governance team is responsible for directing and controlling the project. Project owner, supported by steering group, shall ensure that project has clear, valuable, and justified goal. A competent project manager is assigned and provided with necessary authority, resources, and support. Project performance is effectively monitored and controlled. And finally, that project is terminated in a timely manner if the project risk becomes too high or project no longer promises to deliver sufficient value. The project management team, on the other side, is responsible for managing the project and reporting on its performance. Project manager, supported by an advisory group, shall ensure that optimal solution for achieving the project objectives is identified, planned, and successfully implemented, that a capable and empowered project delivery organization is established, and that stakeholders, risks, issues, and changes are effectively managed through the project lifecycle. And finally, the project delivery team is responsible for executing the project plan and delivering the project scope. Project team members are accountable for completing assigned work packages and tasks while ensuring that the agreed project plan is executed effectively and efficiently. Team performance is transparent, resilient, and adaptable to change, and that risks and issues are identified early and addressed promptly. Sure way to increase probability of project success is to ensure proper documentation of the project. The article shown on the right-hand side of the slide presents research-backed evidence highlighting 18 reasons why project documentation matters. Based on my own experience, I would like to focus on three reasons that I believe are the most important. First, documentation quality is one of the strongest predictors of project success. According to global studies, teams with structured documentation show 40% higher success rate when measured across most of industries, such as IT, construction, finance, manufacturing, and education. While at the same time, nearly 56% of failed projects report poor or missing documentation as a major or primary cause of project failure. Second, project documentation transforms uncertainty and chaos into structure and clarity. And as a result, it reduces project risks, improves decision making, builds trust, and reduces stress. Studies show that teams with documented processes feel 28% more confident, 32% less stressed, and 39% more secure when executing their projects. And finally, the quality of project documentation distinguishes professional project managers from amateur ones. Quality documentation makes project manager and his team look better. Unfortunately, project documentation is often perceived as unnecessary bureaucracy. This usually happens when documents are created simply to satisfy formal requirements rather than to support the needs of project stakeholders and the successful delivery of the project. Another reason why less experienced project managers sometimes avoid documentation is that writing requires deliberate thinking. Thinking is hard. It forces us to clarify assumptions, identify gaps, and make decisions. In contrast, jumping into action, improvising, and hoping for the best is much easier and often more tempting. To be perceived as valuable, project documentation should be simple. It should use KISS templates, where KISS, K-I-S-S, stands for Keep It Simple and Standard. It should be concise, clear, and serve practical purposes, such as supporting thinking and decision making. As you maybe know, there is a saying which states that thinking without writing is a daydreaming. So instead of daydreaming, think, write down your thoughts. It should enable effective communication because people cannot read your mind, but they can read your documents. It creates accountability and alignment because what is not on paper was never said. So if you want to avoid conflicts and misunderstandings in the future, write things down. And finally, it enables adaptability and learning. So in short, the purpose of project documentation is not to create a paperwork. It is to create clarity, alignment, and better project outcomes. As mentioned earlier, in order to be used and to be seen as a supporting tool and not as a bureaucracy, project documentation should follow the KISS principle, K-I-S-S, keep it simple and standard, and should be tailored to project size, complexity, as well as legal or regulatory requirements applicable to the project. A small, simple project doesn't need the same level of documentation as a large one. So during initiation, the project owner and project manager should discuss and agree which documents are required. On the slide, you can see what project management documents I consider myself to be mandatory or optional for each lifecycle stage of a project. For project initiation stage, project charter is a mandatory document, while project stakeholder register and RIDE register are not always mandatory, but they are strongly recommended. The only mandatory document to be developed and approved during project initiation stage is the project charter. The project charter is a document issued by the project owner to formally authorize the existence of the project. Project charter is a contract between the project owner and the project manager. The document provides the project manager with the authority needed to apply organizational resources first to plan the project and after plan is approved to implement the plan. Project charter is also very useful for communication purposes when new stakeholders need to be introduced to the project or the old ones need to be reminded. And finally, the rule which professional project managers follow is that no project should exist without a project charter. Unique temporary endeavor undertaken without approved project charter is not a project, it's an adventure. To be useful, a project charter should be KISS or keep it simple and standard. Ideally 1 or 2 pages and based on a standard template. An example of such PowerPoint template is shown on the screen. You can use AI to help you to develop the first draft of your project charter by providing AI with a template and short description of your project. But the final version must always be reviewed, challenged, and approved by both the project owner and the project manager. Next most important working document in project management is the stakeholder register. The document is initially created during project initiation stage and then continuously updated during later stages of the project. Stakeholder register is a document where project stakeholders are registered, assessed, classified, and where stakeholder engagement and communication management activities are planned and controlled. Stakeholder register helps project team effectively identify stakeholders, understand their needs, expectations, and plan how to engage and communicate with them. Projects succeed through people, so stakeholder engagement and communication management is one of the most important project management activities. The purpose of stakeholder engagement and communication management is to build trust, align expectations, reduce friction, and enable stakeholders to guide and support the project success, not to create trouble. How to create and use stakeholder register. Stakeholder engagement and communication management starts from project stakeholders being identified and registered in the stakeholder register. A good starting point is the project charter where some key stakeholders are usually listed. Then ask a simple question: who else may be affected by, or perceive themselves to be affected by this project? And record those stakeholders in the stakeholder register. Also, you can use the stakeholder mind map shown on the slide to consider different stakeholder groups. And finally, before finalizing the list, ask one more question. Is there anyone else left or forgotten? This final question is simple, but it often reveals important stakeholders who were initially overlooked. Once stakeholders are identified, the next step is to analyze them. Not all stakeholders require the same level of attention. Some stakeholders have high influence over project success, others are strongly affected by the project. Some may be supportive, while others may be resistant or uncertain. For each stakeholder, we need to understand and to analyze stakeholders' stake in the project, as well as stakeholder potential impact on the project success and interest in the project success. This analysis will help to choose the right engagement approach in order to focus stakeholder engagement and communication activities where they matter most. The final step is to plan stakeholder engagement and communication activities. The process begins by assessing the current and desired engagement level for each stakeholder. Once the gap is identified, we have to define and assign practical actions to close the gap. Active stakeholder engagement is achieved by proactively involving stakeholders in decisions and activities where they have the greatest interest, influence, or potential impact on the project. Because communication is one of the key drivers of stakeholder engagement, the next step is to develop a communication plan. Communication should be tailored to each stakeholder's information needs, preferences, and expectations. To determine the appropriate communication content, method, and frequency, identify and document what information the stakeholder needs to receive or provide, when and how the information should be communicated, who should deliver the information, and what feedback, decision, or response is expected from the stakeholder. And remember that the most effective communication is a dialogue, not a monologue, and that communication should be smart. Where SMART stands for simple, it means clear and easy to understand with a high signal to noise ratio. It should be meaningful. In other words, it should be addressing the stakeholders' interests and concerns. It should be actionable, enabling stakeholder to make decisions and take actions. It should be relevant, focusing on matters which have most importance at the moment. And it should be timely, delivered when it can influence the outcomes. And every communication also should be designed to influence what stakeholders know, feel, and do. And once the stakeholder register is created, it should be validated. A quick and practical approach of validation is to review the stakeholder register with the project owner. But the most effective approach is to validate stakeholder register records directly with relevant stakeholders. To conclude, let me share with you key concepts for project stakeholder management from Project Management Institute Project Management Body of Knowledge Guide, PMBOK. PMBOK Guide is a globally recognized standard for project management best practices, and here's what the standard states. First, every project has stakeholders who are impacted by or can impact the project in a positive or negative way. Some stakeholders will have a limited ability to influence the project's work or outcomes, while others will have significant influence on the project and its expected outcomes. Next, the ability of the project manager and team to correctly identify and engage all of the stakeholders in an appropriate way can mean the difference between project success and failure. And to increase the chances of success, the process of stakeholder identification and engagement should commence as soon as possible after the project charter has been approved, the project manager has been assigned, and the team begins to form. The key to effective stakeholder engagement is a focus on continuous communication with all stakeholders. Stakeholder satisfaction should be identified and managed as a key project objective. And finally, the process of identifying and engaging stakeholders for the benefit of the project is iterative and should be reviewed and updated routinely, particularly when the project moves from into new phases or if there are significant changes in the project organization or the wider stakeholder community. I hope you agree with the statements provided in the PMBOK and will engage your stakeholders accordingly. And the third important project management document which might be created during project initiation stage is a right register. Right register is a tool used to track and manage throughout the project lifecycle project risks, planning assumptions, operational issues, as well as dependencies and decisions. Right register, same as stakeholder register, is a living document. It should be continuously updated to reflect newly identified and modified risks, assumptions, issues, dependencies, and decisions throughout the project lifecycle. Use of right register through project lifecycle ensures that potentially impactful impediments to project success are not forgotten or ignored, and that the project stays on track despite uncertainty and change. Let's have a quick example walkthrough of a ride register. The first worksheet is the overall ride log, an overview of identified current risks, assumptions, issues, dependencies, and decisions which have to be managed by the project team. As the project evolves, new items will be added, existing items will be updated, and closed items will be removed from this worksheet. Next worksheet in the right register is the risk log worksheet. The worksheet is used to manage project risks, where risks are unplanned conditions or events which, if materialize, can have an impact on project objectives. In order to be effectively managed, all identified risks should be clearly described, analyzed, and assigned to responsible parties for treatment. Effective risk management is critical to the success of any project. A well-designed project plan makes success possible, but only effective risk management makes success probable. No plan survives reality unchanged. Projects operate in environments filled with uncertainty, assumptions, dependencies, and unforeseen events. Risk management helps teams identify potential threats and opportunities early, assess their impact, and take proactive actions before they affect project outcomes. By reducing the number and probability of critical risks or minimizing their impact when they occur, the likelihood of achieving project objectives increases significantly. Put simply, planning defines the path to success, while risk management protects the project's ability to stay on that path. Next worksheet in the RIDE register is an assumptions log worksheet. The worksheet is used to control validity of project planning assumptions, where assumptions are conditions on which project plan is based and that are assumed to be true but not known for certain. Every project plan is based on assumptions because at the start we never have perfect information about the future. The problem is not that assumptions exist. The problem is when assumptions are assumed to be true and forgotten to be verified. If a key assumption proves to be false, the project plan should be changed. Next worksheet in the RIDE register is issues log worksheet. An issue is different from a risk. A risk is future unplanned event or condition which, if occurs, might affect achievement of project objectives. An issue, on the other hand, is a current situation or condition that is already affecting the project. Issues must be visible, owned, prioritized, and resolved as quickly as possible. Issues log helps the team communicate problems, track resolution actions, learn from recurring patterns, and explain deviations from the plan. Issues are often the most urgent RIDE items. That is why during RIDE reviews, issues should normally be reviewed first, especially those that are off track, overdue, or of high impact. Next worksheet in the RIDE register is dependencies log worksheet. A dependency is something the project needs from outside its direct control. It may be a deliverable from another project or supplier, required project environment conditions, or customer readiness to review, validate, and accept project deliverables. Dependencies can strongly affect project schedule, cost, as well as quality and value. For example, a project may develop a new product, but commercial success of that product will depend on the sales organization being ready and motivated to sell the product. That is why dependencies must be identified, assigned to owners, tracked, and escalated when needed. Finally, the last worksheet in the RIDE register is decision log worksheet. Decision log tracks important decisions that affect the direction or progress of the project. Some decisions act as gates, go, not go gates. Others are forks in the road where the project needs a clear choice. If important decisions are not prepared and tracked, they are often delayed. This can create project delays, rework, and stakeholders' dissatisfaction. Decisions log makes key decisions visible and manageable. This helps the project team keep momentum and avoid unnecessary delays. If project initiation is done well, the project will start with a much stronger chance of success. To check how well project initiation is done, you can use the following checklist. The checklist has 10 requirements and specifies who is accountable to fulfill each of the requirements as well as where evidence could be found. Let's go through the checklist together. First requirement is that the initial business case or any other project justification document has to be available at the initiation stage of the project. And the reason for that is that without that document, it will be difficult to convince stakeholders about the value of the project and later on to check if the value actually was realized. Next, project steering group needs to be established to support project owner in directing the project. But if project is simple and quick, perhaps project owner can do governance by himself. So the steering group in this case does need to be created. Then project manager has to be selected and project charter document need to be created using a standard template. Then in the project charter, project owner has to clearly specify project termination conditions And the reason for that is that if those conditions are not predefined at the start of the project, later on it will be very difficult to timely terminate a project due to sunk cost and similar things. And finally, project charter needs to be agreed with the steering group and the project manager before being approved. All those 6 activities, as you can see, are under accountability of the project owner. Next two activities are expected to be performed by the project manager, and they are that key stakeholders have to be documented in the stakeholder register, and the project risks, assumptions, issues, dependencies, and decisions have to be documented in the project right register. And finally, when all those 8 activities are done, project owner needs to assure that the resources are available for the project to be planned, and those resources include people and money. And finally, project owner has to formally approve the project charter and authorize the start of the plan stage of the project. Now you know all these 10 preconditions for successful initiation of the project, and you can check your project against those 10 requirements. And if something is missing, consider to make immediate action to close the gaps. Thank you for your attention. I hope that by now you should have a clear understanding of why project initiation matters, what needs to be done during project initiation, and how to do it properly. Now I invite you to pause for a moment and reflect. Please pause the presentation and write down your answers to the following questions. What ideas, practices, or tools from this presentation would you like to remember and apply in your projects? And when and where will you put them into practice? Remember that the value of this presentation will ultimately be determined not by what you have seen or heard today, but by what you will do differently tomorrow. So take a minute, write your ideas down. That's it. Now I hope you know why, what, and how you will do to properly initiate your projects. A good start of a project is a halfway to its success. In the next presentation, I will share with you how to do project planning and risk management. So if you're interested, see you there. Bye.